What is an obvious sign that a guy watches too much orn? When half of their submissions to askreddit involve Eek stares blatantly at op. His socks crackle when he walks. Great story about this. Met two coworkers, men, at a bar after work one day. We are at a bar that our company employees commonly go to after work, an area relatively well known by the staff. This particular night, two very attractive female bartenders are working together and we are having a casual conversation with them on and off while we hang out. At some point they walk away and one of my coworkers says, "You know those two are roommates, right?" Him, "Cool." Me, "So, did you know that means at some point they have gotten drunk together and made out?" Him, me and other coworker, "I am just saying." Him, "You watch entirely too much orn if you think that is true." Me, "You ever have a male roommate?" Other coworker, "Yeah, so." Him, "You ever get drunk and blow him?" Other coworker, "When he ucks at weird angles like he thinks someone is watching. He's always creepily hanging around the laundry room when you pull your clean clothes out of the dryer in hopes you'll get stuck." I realized when all the MILF girls are starting to be younger than me. Pensive face. When they think an average erection is 9 inches. When they never listen to what you like and do things so rough it hurts like hell no matter how many times you say it hurts. He criminally neglects foreplay. Just shows that he thinks women are orny all the time and ready to go to moment's notice. Hit takes time, guys. You can't expect bread without several minutes of kneading. Windshield wipers on his TV. When you've told them you're not a squirter, yet he keeps saying, "Come on and squirt for me." Cringe. Having a stupid username that is kind of a reference to orn.
What song do you believe is 100% perfect? Claire de Lune, Debussy. Wish You Were Here. Everlong. Dreams, Fleetwood Mac. God Only Knows, The Beach Boys. Moonlight Sonata. Head Over Heels, Tears for Fears. Here Comes the Sun in My Life. Pink Floyd, Comfortably Numb. Tears for Fears, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Jolene by Dolly Parton. Gimme Shelter. Mr. Blue Sky, Electric Light Orchestra. Shine On You Crazy Diamond. Pink Floyd Why? You can play it in the background at a party and no one will be bothered. You can play it at a concert and everyone will love it. You can do drugs to it. And you can have X to it. All X. No problems. Lyrics are poetry, open to interpretation. Shine On. Fast Car. Tracy Chapman. The lyrics are so moving and evocative. The vocal performance is great, and delivers those lyrics in such a believable, heartfelt way. And the guitar riff is unforgettable too. Perfection. What's a crime that is unforgivable no matter what? Crimes against children, the elderly and animals. Those scammers that go after old people are pretty irredeemable. Pedophilia and rape. Child abuse too. Rape ain't not sure the best word for this, but like malicious violence. For example, domestic abuse, beating someone up beyond physical repair, torture, and cold-blooded murder. There are some acts of violence that there may reason or excuse for which would not make them acceptable, but would make them forgivable, so that wouldn't count. What was something someone said to you that made you orny? After being blown off by family and friends for my moving day, he showed up in his truck and helped me move everything and clean the flat I was leaving until the wee hours of the morning. He looked at me when we were done and said, "Next time, you call me first." You don't call them. You call me first. Turned me into a puddle. I married him. After a guy went down on me, he commented it felt like I was trying to squeeze his head open with my thighs. I weight lift so they are pretty strong. I apologized and said I would be more careful next time and he was like, "Oh no, send me to Valhalla." It was an instant lady wonder for me. Her with a mouthful of pizza. "Wanna eat me out?" Yes, yes I do. I was talking to a guy friend of mine and I like making eye contact to show the person that I'm listening to what they're saying. As I was looking at him, he stopped talking and said, "Your eyes and smile are addicting." As someone with regular brown eyes and a pretty basic SS smile, I was so turnitin after he said that. "I'm gonna go shower and think about you lol." He played it off as a joke, but took way longer than he normally does in the shower. I've never been more desperate to have a ick inside off me than I was an hour after his joke. I have a guy friend in my journalism class. There has always been sexual tension between us, but nothing has ever happened. One day in class we were talking about football and I told him about a team I like. He turned to me and said, "That's my girl," with a wink. I met this lithe, fashionable woman at a careers thing whilst I was an undergraduate at uni. She was a relatively recent alumni and there to help Green's APS like me on how to succeed after graduating. I caught up with her for a longer advice session at a late lunch that turned into drinks. She paused, asked, first drink arrived, and said, "I shouldn't do this. Drinking makes me talk about X." I was pretty young and so the heart was beating quickly at that, but not long after the first drink she looked at me in a pause and said, "You look like fun to tie up." I was more than hard at that point, practically creaming, and just stuttered something like, "I would be okay with that." Had a girlfriend say my name lowly and huskily when SHE really got in the mood. The eye contact really helped too. Was instantly hard and ready. Just out of college, worked at a pizza shop. College girl didn't have shoes, only sandals. I ran her home to get proper footwear. On the way she gave a big moaning sigh and said, "I need to get laid so bad." Not the sexiest thing I've heard or seen, but something about it turned me on so hard. Knew she was hinting that we should take a minute to find those shoes, but I was already married, and those pizzas weren't going to make themselves. Hi. Was having a lazy Saturday afternoon on the couch watching TV and as calm as ever my girlfriend asks me if I can close the curtains. I get up and close the curtains and as I turn around to come back to the couch she has taken her top off and looks me in the eye and says, "This will be more exciting than the show." I didn't need any convincing and in a flash was ripping my own clothes off. The show was Strike Back. This has been several years ago. A friend of mine looked me right into the eye, and she told me, "I want to feel you inside of me." Every time I remember that I get raging horny. I once told this girl at a bar about this chameleon I used to have, Steve. And she said, "Oh, I want to see Steve." In like kind of a tone of voice that made it very clear she wanted to see me other lizard too. That was when I realized I was going to have X that night. So yeah, made me edit. Chameleon I had Steve was very much alive that night. Some girl took me out to get Starbucks once for a high school trip, and I didn't have any money, so she paid for a drink for me, made a joke about her being a sugar mommy. And she said something along the lines of, "I've always wanted to be someone's sugar mommy." I don't know why, but that really got to me. People who lived in 70s, 80s, 90s, what was it really like? A ton of people smoked cigarettes and they smoked them near everywhere. Non-smoking sections in restaurants were frequently just a different section when the whole place would be smoke-filled. Edit. I commented about this recently, so pasting from a prior comment to add. I loved how corner, grocery stores and many other businesses would have at least one arcade machine. Walking into a store to either hear someone playing or hearing the game's demo provided a fun atmosphere that's largely gone these days. Payphones were all over the place. It was awesome when I was like 16 with a pager. I could just say I couldn't find a payphone when my parents were looking for me. Coordinating with people was much more difficult, of course. Like someone would be really late for something, holding everyone up, and no one had a clue what was going on. A lot of time was spent waiting for things. I first got my hands on the NES shortly after its release, and living through that age in gaming was so awesome. My friends and I had a meeting, where if they needed my help in a game they'd better at a certain time. There was a lot of that, like if you went to a concert with someone it was important to designate a meeting place if you get split up. The release of new media like songs or movies was so much more exciting, as options were more limited. You either went to the movies or handful of channels on TV, but visiting rental places was fun. Late at night, basically nothing but infomercials would be on. The old school light bulbs emitted a fair amount of heat. If you went to a theater performance there'd be this huge furnace-like bulb to light the stage, making everyone sweat. And just my experience, but if you walked person you'd generally say hi. Perhaps because it felt awkward not to acknowledge their presence, no having anything else to occupy your attention. I remember the shift when phones tech made us start looking down, not at each other. It really was a different world back then. It was quiet. I don't want to sound like a boomer, but it was really quiet. People spent more time just being outdoors and reading and sitting around not doing much. You couldn't just dial up whatever you wanted on a streaming service. If you wanted to learning something, you had to go a library. There were even people at the library who were sort of human Google. You'd ask them a question and they'd go and find the answer. Correspondence was slower. You mailed things physically. You had to keep track of things like bank accounts and bills manually, with pencil and paper because you couldn't just look up your balance. Parents weren't around as much. Kids came home from school and made themselves a snack, then got on their bikes and left. It's more, be home by dinner, and just, trust your kids would come back home. The world was smaller too. You knew about your town, your friends, maybe your family if they were close, and that was about it. You certainly know what a celebrity was eating or what a guy in China was walking around doing all day. Jesus Christ, I have become a historical reference.